Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lori Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
So let's start out with an easy question to kind of break the ice. And this is true. I am a reader. I love any and all suggestions. What's your very favorite book nowadays? What's your
Oh my goodness. Yes, this is a great question because I read a lot. I try to get to 50 books every year. I mostly read fiction, but I have tried to incorporate more nonfiction just as a way of broadening out my mind. So this year, the book that I gave a 5-star rating on Goodreads too was called The Covenant of Water. It's written by Abraham Verghese, who is a doctor as well as a writer. And it is a beautiful, epic family saga. So that's the book, that's a fiction book that I gave a 5-star to. And another amazing book called Trust by Hernan Diaz, which is just fabulous, another 5-star rating. And then on the nonfiction side, a book that changed my life that I read this year was called Outlive by Dr. Peter Mattia. Please read it. It sort of changed how I think about working out, how I think about eating and sleeping and all of that. So those are my recommendations, all 5-star. And I'm a very difficult grader.
Oh, good. That's great because I enjoy reading all sorts of, I've got a stack about this big on my bedside table that I'm trying to get myself through. And
I love it.
And I just...
What's on top of list for you?
So I have this thing where I send my kids my book of the month, whatever book I think that we should be reading. And I tell them it's our family book club. So go ahead and read it. And they usually don't, but they have a list. I like Don't Trust Your Gut. It's a really interesting kind of, it's nonfiction, but it sort of talks about what the actual data says as opposed to, the trust your gut sort of.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I thought it was good.
I should read it because I trust my gut a lot. So maybe this will sense check me a bit.
Well, the conclusion, I'll give you the quick synopsis. The conclusion is you can trust your gut if you've got data behind it. So you're probably pretty good. So tell me a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get where you are today? How did you start? Talk to me about
what sure.
Got you.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in India. I moved to the US when I was 18 to go to college. I went to a small school in Ohio called Ohio Wesleyan University. And I moved here when I was 18. So that itself, just looking back, I'm 45 now, looking back at the thought that I moved here by myself when I was so young, I think has a big role to play in my life journey, career and otherwise. Just the fact that I was able to move here and adjust here and start a new life so far away from familiarity and from my parents. I studied accounting and psychology, which is just to say that you don't have to study finance to be in investments. You can study whatever you want to and you can learn on the job, or at least I think so. I interned at Merrill Lynch in New York when I was a junior in college. So that's summer between my junior and senior year. And I was privileged enough to get a call back. I came back to Merrill Lynch as a full-time in 2001. And frankly, I loved it. I loved the bond market. I started off on a rotational program, but I ended up in the bond markets at Merrill Lynch. It was very exciting. Bond markets always are very exciting, but certainly in the early 2000s, there was a lot going on with interest rates, with the Fed, and I loved it. And I spent the next 8 years or so at Merrill Lynch trading inflation-linked bonds, which are obviously very, very exciting now. Less exciting back then. Inflation wasn't as topical as it is today. And, I moved from Merrill Lynch to another smaller company called Jefferies. It was a great opportunity to go and run the inflation desk there. I spent about just a little short of a year at Jefferies and then moved to BlackRock in 2010. And I've had a few different roles here. So I've always kept at the core of my career, I've always thought about, what is the most exciting for me? And for me, it's been bond markets. And for me, it's been sort of understanding how and why the markets do what they do. And no matter which role, I've had 4 different roles at BlackRock in my 13 years here. I've been here, it's going to be 14 years in May. I've had 4 different roles, but each of them have sort of evolved, and they've all focused on, focusing on the equity or the bond markets, focusing on speaking to clients, Lori, such as yourself, and really helping investors understand how and why they should invest in certain parts of the market and how they should rotate away or why. So that's really been the journey. It's been fun. I think the main thing that I tell people is it's remembering what drives you. Like, days are going to be tough. Some days are going to be horrible. Some days are going to be wonderful. But keeping at the core of yourself, what do I love the most about day to day? And I love the markets the most in my day to day. And I like to keep that in my jobs.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And that's good advice too, to kind of, I always say it's a little bit hard to work 30, 40, 50 years, depending on how long you work, doing something that you dislike. So yeah, that's important for anyone to kind of decide what is the most important to you. And I will say, Gargi, that some people are all about the Taylor Swift concert and all that exciting stuff. Like for me in finance, you are the rock star. So,
oh my goodness.
That's it. That's it's kind of exciting to hear. One of those finance geeks too. So bond markets are exciting.
Bond markets are exciting. They are. And look, I mean, a piece of advice that I got very early in my career that I took to heart and it's worked out for me is don't think about which fields are going to, be the most lucrative. Think more around what you like, and that will be the most lucrative field for you. So when I was graduating college, everyone was going into investment banking. Like that was the cool, sexy thing to do. I would have probably gotten fired by year 2 because it just wasn't my thing. Trading bonds was my thing. So I, sort of finding the job or that path that speaks to you the most, you'll be successful at it, instead of trying to follow the herd into something that you've either heard of or something that you've read about that other people are successful at. And for me, it was the bond markets and now the equity markets.
Yeah. So during the journey, as you're moving through your career, what's the best investment you made in you? Was there a turning point for you, aha moment, something that you can point to that led to your success? Or maybe there's more than one.
Yeah, I think a few. The one thing that I did in my career, which I think many of you do, is become a subject matter expert. So knowing one thing really well, that you become the go-to person when anybody has a question on that topic. So find whatever that is in your field and become a subject matter expert at it. But the turning point for me was keeping that and broadening out from it. So having that depth versus the breadth. And I think when I was younger in my career, I felt that I could be that subject matter expert, just have that career depth, and that would be enough. But as I sort of became a little bit more senior, and especially once I moved to BlackRock, which is where I currently am, I recognized how important it was to also have that career breadth, to also have that market breadth, to not just be the subject matter expert on this one thing, but be able to speak a little bit about 5 other things that impact that one thing. And then not losing your expertise. And that's the hard part. So you gain a little bit of breadth, but don't lose your depth. So I think for me, that aha moment, if you will, was number one, coming to terms with recognizing that there is more to life than being the subject matter expert on inflation, and being able to learn and adopt and be able to speak to other things and make that a part of my narrative. Number 2, still find a way to keep that subject matter expertise going. Maybe I'm not as deep in the weeds that I used to be 7 years ago because I'm not doing it day to day, because now my job is broader. But I can find out about that in 15 minutes if I needed to. I still have enough tentacles out in the markets or reading enough stuff that I can turn that back on when needed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think recognizing that was a turning point in my career. And I think the other thing that I'd say for me, and I hope for many of you that are listening to this, is, you asked the question around investment. It's that investment in yourself, and specifically the investment in yourself, in your ability to grow. What I mean by that is when we were all younger, maybe when you're out of college for 2 or 3 years, you look around, there's so much you don't know. And it's very natural to get a little bit overwhelmed by all that you have to learn. And, people throw out the word imposter syndrome quite a bit. And, that feeling that some of us might sometimes have that, oh, I'll get found out. And the investment that I made in myself, and I hope that many of you will make in yourselves, is changing the mindset into thinking, yes, I don't know this now, but there is nothing that will stop me from learning this, and I will learn it and I will get there. And that is a mindset change. It's taking your fear, the fear of getting found out, the fear of not knowing what's next, or the fear of not knowing how to work the system, and reassuring yourself that, nope, it's just a matter of time. I got this. And that was a mindset change. And I feel like that's an investment I made in myself, and I believed in myself. And I think that helps. And listen, there's still moments of every single day where I'm like, okay, I'm a little over my head on this one. And I fall back to yes, I'm a little over my head, but there's nothing stopping me from learning how to do this and do it well.
Yeah, I love that. We have a young admin in our office, and her motto is, you can do hard things. And so
yeah, we all can.
Yeah, that
we all can, as long as we put the time to learn about it, to research it, to read about it, whatever it takes, whatever the hard thing is.
Yeah. And having that, you do have to, I think it's surprising that even at your stage in your career, you're still running into things that are like, this may be a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I'm going to try.
Every single day. I'm just like, oh my God, this is the day that and no, it's literally like the minute the thought enters my brain, almost immediately telling myself, yes, but this is also the day when I'm going to figure out, I'm going to block off time in my calendar, and I'm going to read about it, learn about it, have that difficult conversation, take whatever measures need to, because it's up to me. So that mindset, I literally have to wake up and tell myself, nope, going down the wrong path, self-correct.
I love that. Yeah. And it's a good reminder too, to ourselves to have that self-talk, to have that positive, okay, I haven't done it yet. Doesn't mean that
it's just a matter of time till we can do it. And then the other thing is, if you're ever experiencing that self-doubt, sort of asking yourself, is there any data that shows that I'm not going to be successful at this? Like, what is this feeling based on? Have I failed at something similar to this? Have I been unsuccessful the last time I was asked to do something like this? Is there data that is making my insecurity come to light? Often we'll find that there is not. It's just a feeling. And then you pivot into thinking about, well, it's just a matter of time till I figure it out.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. Always growing, always getting better, always trying hard things. So let's pivot to, what is the worst advice someone gave you on your journey? Did you take it? What did you learn?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I think I was once told, and this was when I was maybe about 10 or 12 years ago, I was sort of, a new leader, perhaps had newly been promoted. And I think I was once told that I was almost too casual. I think, I can't remember the word that they had used, but the message that I had got was that your casual style and the way in which you just, you're around and you chat with people and you're so available, your door's always open, like that makes you not senior enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that had provided that feedback to me was actually, they meant it came from a really good place.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, you need to maybe button up a little bit more. Like, just don't make yourself so available. Don't be so frank. Don't be so casual. Mm-hmm. And I keep coming back to that word. And I think that maybe that piece of advice is definitely true for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I did think about it when that feedback was provided to me. I gave it some thought. I thought about whether that could be something that I should take into consideration. And I realized that it doesn't apply to me. Like, I cannot be that person. I cannot be someone that is creating a barrier between me and someone else. I am very extremely approachable. I think that's what it was. I was told that you're too approachable, and that is taking away from your executive presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was not great advice, because frankly, if I tried to be another person, then that person wouldn't be me. Then I'm trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
So good to know that was a piece of feedback. It wasn't the right piece of feedback for me,
Mm-hmm.
but also I think it taught me that not every, listen, feedback is incredibly important, and especially for the women listening to this. Sometimes just know that women often don't get as much feedback as men do, and we need the feedback. So feedback is good, but not all feedback is necessarily applicable to every single situation. In this, and because this was the question that you asked me,
Yeah.
like, what is the wrong piece of advice? I think in this particular case, the feedback was not very applicable to my style of leadership. I am still fairly approachable. I'm fairly casual. That is just my style. I know when I need to button it up, and when I do, but I can't be that person.
Yeah. I love that sense of authenticity, being your real self in all aspects of your life. That tends to come through where you're your authentic self. I like that. Thank you. What about regrets? Looking back on your years, what's one situation that you maybe would have handled differently, or you wish you had handled differently? If you could go back again, you would have handled differently.
Yeah, for sure. I've had a few regrets. I think the big one is that I've had some opportunities in the past, especially in my 20s, to go work in another country, and I never took it. So I grew up in India, as I said. I studied in Ohio for 4 years, and then I've pretty much lived in New York since then. So I graduated college in '01, and I've been in New York for 22 years. And I've had opportunities to move to other countries to work. And the times that they have come up, it just hadn't been the right time for me at that point. Especially there was an opportunity when I was still at Merrill Lynch to move to London, which I look back upon, and I was in my 20s, and that would have been awesome. That was such a great opportunity. And it, I guess I was scared to take the risk. I drowned myself in what ifs. But the one what if I didn't ask myself was, what if I'm a success? I focused a lot more on what if it doesn't work out and I have a visa in New York, and then I went down the path of oh, but my job is tied to my visa status, and if I leave and then I went down the negative.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't for a single second let it enter my brain that what if it works? What if it's amazing? What if I'm super successful? So I definitely think back on that. I was much younger. I was probably mid-20s or late 20s at that point. So learned a few lessons, but that's something that I look back on, and I wish I'd gone and lived in London for a few years. Now, having said that, I'm not dead, so I can still do this. I can still do this. So let's hope I get another opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And the what ifs, looking back and kind of thinking about, what if I'd done it scared? What if I'd fearlessly tried?
Yeah.
It might not have worked out. You might not
exactly
be today,
but it has to enter your brain. Yeah. And I think now when I think about new opportunities in my career and decide if I want to, as I said before, I've had a few different roles at BlackRock, and every time I've considered a new different role, there's always a part that wonders, what if it doesn't work out? But I take that risk because I guess I have that regret on the risks that I didn't take. So I guess there was a lesson there. But I think maybe always considering the what if it all works out, instead of going down the, sort of the journey of, all the risk factors that are out there. And look, I could have gone and it may not have worked out, and that's fine.
Yeah. You learn. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So if you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell her? Is that the moment that you talk to her and say, hey?
I would tell her that it all works out. I mean, I think my 20-year-old self was so paranoid, was so ambitious and so worried that my career wouldn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And I was so worried about risk taking, which is one thing I mentioned. I think I tell my 20-year-old self, just chill a bit. It's fine. It's going to be okay. It's going to work out. Look, I worked really hard. I had the typical immigrant mentality. Like I spend a lot of time focused on my career. I gave it my everything. And that's great because I definitely love my job now. But maybe I'd tell myself that, look, it's going to work out. There's no substitute for working really hard. I did. And I would reiterate that, like, there's no substitute for being a really hard worker, having strong work ethics, and building your relationships. I think that's the one that I feel very privileged that I've worked with such wonderful people in the industry, across the industry, in New York, and good times and bad times, having a community of people to share that with. Like, how does this happen in your industry? How does this happen in your field? And how does this happen in your company or in your division, if that's someone within our company? So reiterating that as well, like the importance of hard work and importance of networking. Mm-hmm. I think nothing replaces that. And I think just, maybe patting myself on the back for doing some of those, and maybe reminding myself to do some others even more.
Well, I like the idea that you brought up that you were approachable and that you continued to remain approachable. That probably helped with the networking, making friends, seeing how things happen in different parts of the industry or different industries, to be able to talk and interact with all sorts of different people.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it did. I think that, look, hard work, Carla Harris talks about this in the Carla's Pearls, and I'm sure many of you know who I'm talking about, but she talks about your performance currency and your network currency, and nothing that I can say here will, be able to do her words justice, but she talks about one currency declining and the other currency appreciating throughout the course of your career. So you can be a really strong worker and a really hard worker with strong work ethic, which we all have, and I pride myself on that. But that is expected. And throughout the course of your career, that is expected of you. You're not getting any extra props for bringing your A+ self to work. But the currency that appreciates through the course of your career is actually not your performance currency, but your network currency. So how well do you know people in your firm, across the industry, across your city, across your global business, and finding a way to making sure that we're all doing that you and I obviously met at one of these events, and thank you for having me here. But that speaks to how you and I spoke to each other and created a network, and that allows us to chat again now and hopefully continue to do so. And that's how networks are built. It's making yourself available and talking to people and making time for people and continuing to do that even when you're not having your best days.
Yeah. I love that. And in fact, in a lot of the different women that I've interviewed professionally, they talk a little bit about having a mentor or something like that kind of helps them throughout their career. And that's one theme that keeps coming up, is just the idea of having a network, usually a mentor or two throughout different times in your career that help you grow that network and give you someone to kind of bounce ideas off of as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think a network versus having like a informal or formal mentorship, I think I view those two a little differently. Mm-hmm. I think you can have your network of people that you just lean on. They're your board of directors. They're people that you turn to for fun sometimes, just to get a beer after work and talk about what movies or shows you've watched. And it doesn't all have to be about work, but they're a part of your community. They're a part of your work community. I think networking, and especially moving away from networking, speaking about mentorship, I think that plays a different role, right? That is actually having someone that you are turning to for guidance, mm-hmm. that you are turning to because you think that they'll be able to bring you something that that they have an expertise in, whether that it's in the industry, whether that's, they just have more experience than you, they've been around this industry, or maybe it's a brand new industry that you know nothing about. Like they are an expert at AI or how to integrate, digital currencies. And you might want to learn more about that. And they're your mentor in that space.
Yeah, that's good. Good thoughts, good ideas. I'm interested in a question. Did you face any unique challenges because you were a woman? I know that like in my professional career, women do have unique challenges. We have pay issues. We've got issues with childcare and other caregiving opportunities. Did you run into anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, just being a woman in the business on Wall Street is definitely, and also, if, for those listening and that can't see me, I am a woman of color. I am an immigrant in this country. I did not grow up here. All of those, the intersectionalities of that have shaped who I am. And maybe to a certain extent, they've also driven outcomes in my life. Mm-hmm. And some of them have been challenges, yes. And some of them have been opportunities. So I do want to talk about challenges, but I also wouldn't want to talk about challenges without turning them into opportunities. So yes, being the only in the room has been tough. And I have been the only in the room for decades. Growing up as a bond trader on a trading floor that was very white, very male, had some challenges, the loneliness of it, the feeling of you being the representative voice for every woman or every woman of color. Mm-hmm. That burden felt high. Like, I don't know how every single immigrant does this, answers this question, or I don't know how every single woman talks about this. So sort of those burdens remain high and have been a challenge. On the flip side, I think, and this is at least how I have always thought about at least the gender and the race dynamics, is that it also has given me a unique ability to stand out. Mm-hmm. So yes, the burden's high because you're the only in the room. And believe me, if you make a mistake, everyone remembers because you're the only in the room. And you don't want to speak up because you don't want to draw that attention to yourself, because you don't want to make the mistake, because if you do, people will remember. But if you are good, when you are good, not an if, when you are good, you are also remembered. And that is brilliant. That is beautiful. That is what we want to capitalize on. So for anyone listening that sometimes feels that they are underrepresented in any way, it doesn't have to be a gender dynamic. It doesn't have to be a race dynamic. It can be you're the first person in your family that went to college. It can be that you're or the only person from the South that's in an office in New York. Whatever the underrepresentation is, I think the way that one can think about it is that when you are good, you really are remembered. You really do stand out. And whether or not you're good can at least 70 to 90% of the time be in your control. Not 100, but how good you are, whether it's at a presentation, whether it's at at your job, whether it's at talking to a client, whatever it can for the most part be in your hands. So I like that too.
Yeah, I agree. And putting that work in on the front end, that hard work and that work ethic to shine. Yeah, I think that's important to come out and feel proud of yourself, which leads me to the next question. What is the thing you are most proud of?
Oh, I'll answer it from a personal perspective and a work perspective.
Yeah.
So from a work perspective, I feel very privileged that I have been able to grow many careers. I've been at BlackRock for 13 years, almost 14 years, and I have seen so many individuals grow up from being an analyst all the way to a managing director, and having had an influence in their career, even the slightest influence, having been able to help someone shine, help teams, grow teams. That is it's a privilege. It's fantastic watching people grow and shine and go on. And, if I've been able to help them in any way, or even managing my own team, and I have an incredible group of people that I have the privilege of leading, watching them go forth and do new things and just shine. I think that's incredible. So that's something I'm proud of, having had that opportunity. And I think from a personal perspective, the thing I'm proudest of is the relationships that I have had. It's really that. I mean, I have, whether it's with my husband, whether it's with my family, whether it's with the circle of friends, it's the investment that I have made in the relationships in my life. Yeah, I'm really proud of them, because that's, at the end of the day, that's all you have. You have your health, and you have your friendships and your family or relationship.
Yeah. I agree. And I think that shows through on your work side as well. The idea of relationships and building networks and making yourself available and being proudest of watching people succeed. It just speaks to that idea of relationships throughout your whole life, not just in your work life. So,
yeah, because at the end of the day, what could be better than watching people, whether they're your family members or your team, thrive? Like, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah. I find a lot of joy. Well, that's what started the podcast.
Yeah, I love that you're doing this.
Yeah, help my team grow, because I just love watching them succeed. And those young ladies, I'm thinking that we could give them a heads up and help them out in any way that we can. So, any advice for some younger woman on the start of her journey here? You're successful, and I'm not saying you're at the end of your journey. You're not dead yet, right? But
not dead yet.
You're further down the road than some of them who are just starting out.
22 years in, I'd say sort of middle to 3/4 way done. So I think a few things. So number one, if you're starting out, if you're year 1 to 3 in, no one's expecting you to reinvent the workforce. That is not the expectation of you, right? Like, the expectation of you is that you show up every single day, you work really hard, you check your work, everything that you turn in is devoid of any mistakes, and you have a good attitude to learning and a good attitude to your team members. That's it. That is the expectations 2 years in. I just want to be a sponge. I want to absorb. I want to learn. When I turn in work, it is good work that my superiors can completely trust. That's what gets you to the next level. So if you're doing those things, no one's expecting you to come up with anything that's changing the revenue growth of your company, right? Like, you're 2 years in. But people are expecting that your spreadsheet does not have a single mistake and your PowerPoint doesn't have a spelling mistake, right? Like, those little things, but they make such a huge difference. Like, all your work is reliable work. I think as you're sort of more mid-career, as you after the first few years, if you're sort of year 4 to 7, I think this is where you're expecting you, we as in the, capital V, I think you are expected to go from execution, so doing things that people are asking you to do, to more defining a strategy, understanding where you can bring impact in. So understanding, where can I bring a change? What is something that I can bring to this that I can own from start to finish, instead of just executing it, sort of initiating your own ideas, saying that here's a way in which we can make this process better. Here's a way in which this process completely should be eliminated. And it can be as simple as, as running a meeting a different way. You don't have to come up with a new app. But how are you adding value which isn't told to you by your manager? How are you adding value by taking initiative and by devising your own strategy, seeing something from start to finish? And then the last thing, and this is sort of years 6, 7 onwards, I think one big thing to remember, and this is my advice to myself and to others, is recognizing that it is not a straight line up. Like, it's not a 45-degree line which just constantly climbing. That's not what a career looks like. The real way a career evolves is you have these amazing years or months that things are going so well. You're getting recognized, you're getting patted on the back, you're getting a promotion, and awesome. And then there's years, and by the way, multiple years, not months, multiple years when nothing happens. You're still working really hard. You are bringing your A+ self, but nothing is happening. You're just grinding it out. You're not getting recognized. You're not getting promoted. And that is also okay. Mm-hmm. So sort of making sure that you can ride the wave on both sides, that you can take the up and the steady. And of course, then there'll be downs too, knowing that there can be huge setbacks. So I think recognizing and reminding ourselves that it's of your 40-year career, there'll be a few years, and I hope for all of you, many, many years, that you constantly get recognized and you constantly have amazing things happening. But frankly, more than half the time, you'll be still working really hard and nothing exciting will be happening. But the work will happen underneath. Like you'll be learning new things, you'll be managing new people, you'll be learning a new skill set. But week over week, you won't feel a change. But year over year, you have had massive changes. So I think sort of the patience of grinding it out when the things get slow and tough.
Yeah. I was reading a book called The Gap and the Gain, and it talked about looking back and really measuring, because you are right. There are times where it just sometimes it feels long. And if you can look back and say, okay, but what am I doing better now than I did a year ago? So even if it's just internal, maybe you're not getting awards every day or anything.
Yeah.
But that internal looking back and saying, I'm making progress and I'm happy with where I'm at and where I'm going.
And it's so hard, right? I know it's easy for you and I to sit here and say this, and it's so hard to experience this in real life. And I've been there, where you're looking at someone else and they're getting promoted, and you're looking at another friend and they're just traveling to these fancy places for work. And you're like, where's my turn? And the best way I can say this is because I'm a runner and I run marathons. I'll say, run your own race. Like on race day, you don't know what someone else's training is. You don't know what their time goal is. You don't know what their nutrition plan is. You just know yours. So on race day, run your own race. So in your career, like, don't look around. And I've done it. And I know it's just damaging. Like, oh, why is this one getting promoted? Why is that one? Like, it's damaging. It brings you no joy. It kills you. And you just have to remember, like, I am running my race. I am better today than I was 2 years ago. And I'm still bringing my best self to work. I'm still growing a team. I'm still the best X, whatever your X is, and trying to stick it out.
Oh, Gargi, I love that. That's so, it means so much. And it really.
But isn't it true? Don't we both do it? I'm sure you've had moments where, you look around and someone's getting this, someone's getting that, but you don't know their journey. And again, easy for me right now. Like tomorrow morning, I could wake up and be like, why is this happening?
Today wasn't as good a day as yesterday. Man, I'd like the award, please. Yeah. Please. So, well, Gargi, I really appreciate your time with me today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lori. It was lovely of you to reach out, and it was great to chat with you.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Sure thing.